thank you once again to a wonderful chair. Thank you, Karen. Now, we've got something really, really special for you now. We are near to a close, so just hold in there. You're doing really well. It's beautiful to see so many of you still here. But we've got something really, really special, a lovely surprise. I'd like to invite up here Justin. Justin Handsford is an activist, lawyer, scholar, law professor, and Pan-Africanist. His work currently has taken him to South Africa as a recipient of the prestigious Fulbright Scholar Award to study the legal career of Nelson Mandela in South Africa. As an activist, living just 10 minutes away from Ferguson, Justin has been at the forefront of legal organising and advocacy in the aftermath of the murder of Mike Brown. After facing arrest for his protesting efforts, he co-authored the Ferguson to Geneva Human Rights Shadow Report and accompanied Ferguson protesters and Mike Brown's family to Geneva, Switzerland, to testify to the United Nations. I could go on, but I'm going to leave it there. Please, a very warm welcome from Nottingham to Justin Handsford.
Thank you. So I just really wanted to say, first of all, thank you for having me and for having this event. It's very moving to see my friends and my protest family up there on these big screens all the way here in the UK. Even if I don't understand all the accents and everything people are saying about them, I know that we have not just comrades but family across the world, and that means a lot. We spent a lot of time out there. As you heard, I represented the family of Mike Brown. I've also worked with Rika Boyd's family and Eric Garner's family I'm working with now. We've done public education. We've faced the police. We've been tear gassed. They shot rubber bullets at us. You know the story. We've been traumatized. Many of the protesters today have PTSD. Many of us have recurring nightmares. Many of us have, in spite of that, been able to frame our resistance in such a way that you could hear us across the Pacific or the Atlantic or whatever the name of the ocean is, and that that means so much. So there are so many things in my head based on what I heard today. We definitely don't need a new civil rights movement, and we're not a new civil rights movement. But again, from the beginning, they called us rioters and looters. And so it took intentional work to create a framework where they could look at us as humans and as the children of the freedom riders. And so to take that tradition and mobilize that tradition and try to just get them up off of us, and off of our backs so that we can be less criminalized, at least in our resistance. That was a long struggle. And I think, as we move forward, spending time in South Africa, the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters, are my close friends in South Africa. We have a Fanon reading group and a Steve Biko reading group. And I know Patrice, and I saw pictures up there of Opal and Damon and Tefpo. They went to Palestine together almost a year ago. And I know Patrice has come here to the UK before, and we're getting some frequent flyer miles that we're racking up, trying to make sure that this is a global movement, not a local movement, because that's not gonna be enough. But more than anything else, I just wanted to say thank you for having this event. I'll continue to hope that God blesses you, and I hope that you continue to grow in your intellectual understanding of the movement. I hope to continue to grow. And this was a huge growth experience for me. I learned a lot today. And, all the white domination, one thing I've learned in South Africa, I stopped talking about white supremacy and I talk more about white domination, because I believe it's the ability to take that overblown idea of themselves as a state, as a system, and to impose that on Black people around the world. That's the power to impose that violence on us is what we're fighting, I think, more than anything else. But as long as we can come together like this and work with each other and learn from each other and grow with each other, I think we're going to win. I think we're going to win. And I wanted to end. I have a comrade here from the United States who is going to come up to the front. I think she knew she was going to do this. You can introduce yourself and lead us in this.
My name is Belina Shasafa. I'm studying at the London School of African and Oriental Studies currently, also a university student in America. I've met Justin at the Black Lives Matter conference, and he worked closely with my sister in Ferguson. And it's spaces like this that bring us together and make these connections happen. I didn't think I'd see him in Nottingham 6 months later, but yeah, it is our duty to fight for our people.
So that is our chant that we end all of our Black Lives Matters events with. And so, it's, as you saw before, Asada Shakur is the one who made this a reality. But actually, I would like to ask everybody to stand up and hold hands for this, because this is a time when we actually get a chance to openly express our unity. Oh yeah, no, this is family. This is all right. Hold hands, yes. And you can lead the chant. So for each time she says one sentence, repeat after her, and don't be afraid to shout, because we mean this, right? We want them to hear this all the way in Ferguson. All right?
It is our duty to fight for our people.
It is our duty to fight for our people.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and support one another.
We must love and support one another.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
A little more powerful next time.
Let's go for it.
It is our duty to fight for our people.
It is our duty to fight for our people.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and support one another.
We must love and support one another.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
It is our duty to fight for our people.
It is our duty to fight for our people.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and support one another.
We must love and support one another.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains. All right, thank you.
It's been a long day. We've got one speaker left before the evening session. The final speaker is Stafford Scott. Anyone who's followed the events surrounding the death of Mark Duggan Northland will probably have heard of Stafford speak at some stage. Stafford is my colleague at the Monarch Group, but more importantly, he's been supporting the community in Tottenham for over 30 years. Many of you young folk might not know what the level of brutality was like during the 1770s and 1980s. I'll give you a small example, because you've probably all heard of Broadwater Farm. Broadwater Farm's an estate in Tottenham with around 1,000 flats and a community of around 3,000 people. In the months leading up to the 1984 uprising, there were over 3,000 police officers stationed on the estate on a regular basis. This is 3,000 police officers enforcing 1970s-style racist stereotypes. This stereotyping hasn't gone away, and in this climate, Tottenham has witnessed 4 black deaths: Cynthia Jarrett in 1985, Joy Gardner in 1993, Roger Sylvester in 1999, Mark Duggan in 2011. Mark has been at the forefront of many of these campaigns during the past 30 years. When we were planning this conference, we did think about listing all the black deaths in this country, but there's just too many. There's been 3,180 deaths in custody since 1968, and a further 209 racial murders since 1970. These fallen are people from our communities, and groups like the Monitoring Group have always counted and remembered them, because we always knew Black Lives Mattered, even before the hashtag existed. Over the past 30 years, the Monitoring Group has helped thousands of people suffering racial violence. Some of these campaigns you might have heard of, like Blair Peach, Bad for 12, Drummond Street Defence Campaign, Kuldip Singh Saikon, New Diamond 5, Zaid Mubarak, Stephen Lawrence, Michael Menson and Ricky Will. Many of these campaigns we are having to relive as we discover that we were under police surveillance. I've been asked to introduce Stafford. Well, I don't know whether he needs an introduction. I'll put it simply. He's older, wiser, and a lot more articulate than me, and he's going to provide some words of wisdom today. He doesn't come up to Nottingham very often, and we hope we're going to put clap hands together to give him a warm welcome.
Well, thank you. There was a interesting introductions from Jags. I think the only thing that he said about me that I agree with is that I'm older than him. And since the Black Lives Matter movement started, I'm starting to feel even older. Since I was invited to this event, I went and had a little look at the Black Lives Matter website. It not only made me feel old, it made me feel as if somehow the most significant characteristic that's guided me all my life has been removed and introduced. Because when I went to see what it was all about, I learned this new terminology. And apparently, I'm a CSI gendered person. I fought all my life for people to see my blackness, respect my blackness, and understand my blackness. And I won't, can't, shan't put it aside for anybody. I've got lots of things here that I want to say. There's too many things here that I want to say, and then there's all these things in my head that I want to say. And I've been in here and I've listened to some wonderful speakers. The bits that I understood, I thought was pretty good. I'm old school. I make no apology for that. If it wasn't for our old school style, the new school wouldn't be around. So the new school needs to, I think, remember that. Not to put us to one side. Not to think that because we didn't born you into a society where you were strong means that what we did was wrong. It's part of a process, it's part of a journey. It's a long journey, and sometimes we're going to go down different roads. In America, in the UK, we're in different places. Most of the black African Caribbeans that's in the UK come from the Caribbean. That's why we're called African Caribbeans, so it makes sense, doesn't it? But we come from the Caribbean. So when we first came here, we looked to the Caribbean for guidance. We were Garveyites first. That's race first. That's black first. That's how we were born. But then we realized, we always knew America was here, but roots, that kind of grabbed us and shook us up and made us have a double look. We knew about the civil rights movement. We lived through some of that. I'm 55 years old. I grew up with the notion that black is beautiful. I was fortunate enough when I was growing up to be cute. So white people used to see me and say, "Yo, you look like Cassius Clay." They didn't know many black folk in those days, did they? So when I heard Cassius Clay come on my TV and say, "Black is beautiful," I said, "He's beautiful, I'm beautiful. We must be beautiful." And every black person I see, especially in those days, because we were a minority. A minority. In those days, we wouldn't have spaces like this filled up with black people because we wouldn't be allowed in there. You wouldn't be allowed to do it in places like Nottingham. I tell you that, this city has some history. All right? So growing up, we kind of had to be rough and we kind of had to be tough. So if I come over as macho, I'm not going to apologize for that. That's what helped me to survive. It's what sometimes protects my family. It's what sometimes I have to use to protect the hood. I'm glad that when Jags introduced me, he didn't talk anything about me being a leader. Normally when I'm introduced in other circles, they call me a leader, community leader. I actually think that's probably as dismissive as being called CSI gender. It's patronizing. It's patronizing. Some people I see in this country, they fall into this thing, I'm the leader, and they want to be the leader. I don't know about that. I've accepted at different times the term, the one that suits me best is the one I grew with, and that's a rebel. But I've accepted As I've grown, I'm a community activist. But the reality is, I'm a community servant. I'm a servant of my community. I don't need to shout and say that I'm a servant of my community. I need to serve, and that's what I do. There was a time in my life when I was younger and wilder, when I was ready to sacrifice myself, because I wasn't going to accept racism in any form, any shape, at any time, and at any point. And I was ready to sacrifice myself and give up my life. So much so, the age of 17, I ended up in prison. Amongst the things I was involved in, actually started off being arrested by SOS. You've heard people talk about the SOS laws here, where some of us got arrested for crimes that didn't even happen and then got punished. So it made me mad and wild. Ended up in prison. One of the things that I did to end up there was seriously injure a well-known racist who lived in my area and used to terrorize and torment people and thought he was going to kick a black woman's head in front of me whilst he called her a black bitch, amongst other things. So I was ready to sacrifice my life. And when I went to prison, that's when I was exposed to some of the writings that goes down in the States. I can't even tell you all the books I read. The first one I read was the Scottsboro Boys. And because my name is Scott, that burnt me to my soul. I've read the Eldridge Cleaves. I've read all the books that there were to be read at the time. And the experience that I read about taught me and made me understand that here I was in prison saying I'm here because I'm black, innit? Because I stood up for myself, innit? But reading those books taught me what blackness really is, what blackness is really about. And it's more than a colour. It's more than a way of life. Blackness, when you're in the West, means making sacrifices. And that's what I learned from my brothers and sisters in America. And I want to say this to my brothers and sisters in America who are here today. We're brothers and sisters. We came from the same place. We just got off at different stops on our journey. And let's hope that our journey is going to ultimately take us all back together again. But we have to recognize and understand that we're in different places at different times. We are a minority in this country. And I know that you're a minority in the States, but when you get together with Hispanics, Latinos, and other groupings, it makes you much larger than we are here. So your struggle may be somewhat different from my struggle. My struggle, I'm not going to change the political processes that we have in this country here today or now. So I'm going to find different ways that I struggle and I serve my community. I work for an organisation called the Monitoring Group. The Monitoring Group is a company limited by guarantee. And our aims are to promote good race relations, to evidence race relations. Sorry, let me do this. I told you I'm old. To advance race relations by means of education and awareness raising, to relieve the needs of those who are distressed or suffering violence or harassment. Sounds pretty grandiose, but what we do is we do casework, we do advocacy, we put on trauma therapy services for our clients who are the victims of racism, racial oppression, race discrimination, and violent racial attacks. The Monitoring Group is now recognised as one of the leading anti-racist charities in the UK. It's because we're good, but it's also because there aren't that many anti-racist charities left in the UK as they stop finding ways to fund these organisations. Over the last 30 years, it's become a permanent feature within the black and ethnic minority communities and their struggle for civil rights and state accountability. As a consequence of this and its national campaigns, it occupies a unique and unparalleled space in the UK's social justice landscape. This is evidenced by the fact that it has supported or initiated over 100 family and community justice campaigns. And I want you to know the emphasis that I put on the words family and community justice campaigns, organised scores of conferences, public meetings, protests on policing, racism and state accountability. And we've been involved in many campaigns. such as the Stephen Lawrence many campaigns and many public inquiries, such as the Stephen Lawrence campaign and public inquiry, the public inquiry into the murder and killing of Victoria Clomier, and the murder by the racists in Feltham Prison of Zayed Mubarak, which led to the uncovering of discreditable state conduct. And these public inquiries led to significant changes in state policies. So we believe absolutely, fundamentally, that any campaign or activism that we undertake is on behalf of and in the name of the victim who has suffered an injustice. We're not running no political programs. We're not trying to give leadership to the world. We're trying to defend those who are at the hard face of racism. I come from a place called Broadwater Farm in Tottenham. Broadwater Farm is an estate, as Jag said. It just takes up about a mile square in the area. But Broadwater Farm is infamous because up until August the 4th, 2011, Broadwater Farm was the last place that the mainstream media would have said had riots in the 80s. We had lots of riots in the 80s. I hope our brothers and sisters in the States heard about them. If you didn't, we're going to have to do them again. But we can't talk as good as you guys. You've got all these black institutions, universities and colleges where you go and you get educated. So we might not be able to talk as good as you guys, but we can kick up a stink when we're ready. And we want people to know that and understand that. Because in kicking up that stink, we're not just doing it because we're mad people. We're doing it because we come to the point where we've had enough. And we're putting down markers. And we're telling them when we're beating them, yo, copper, Black Lives Matter, remember that. Black Lives Matter, remember that. Take that home and let everybody know that Black Lives Matter. So I come from a place called Tottenham. The four people the judge just mentioned to you, Cynthia Jarrett, I used to call her auntie. Coming up here with my brethren, I told them some jokes about Floyd and Patrick Jarrett, who I grew up with from there to even today. Joy Gardner, didn't really know her too well, but in our community, you'd see someone a couple times, you'd say, hi, what's going on, sis? So I knew her on speaking terms. Roger Sylvester, little youth that grew up under us. He used to come to Broadwater Farm. I used to say to him, Roger, you shouldn't even be here, brother. You're too nice for this place. You're too good for this place. And Mark Duggan, he was unfortunate to be born on Broadwater Farm because he was born to people and parents who couldn't escape the hood. Now, I wasn't going to call all those names, but Jags did, so I've just done it because I was going to ask everybody in here to tell me those names. Because I know that most people in here wouldn't be able to tell me those names. If I asked you what year did those people dead, most people in here wouldn't be able to tell me that. So that's why I questioned Adam Elliott Cooper about shutdowns in Westfields. That's why I asked him the question. Because the question I asked and the question I asked today is why would I lay down for Eric Garner when I can't stand up for Roger Sylvester? I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Roger Sylvester, 1999. They dragged him out of his house, dragged him down the stairs, dragged him into van. They dragged him so viciously that by the time he got in the van, he didn't even have no clothes on. They took him to a hospital, supposed to be a place of safety. And they strangled him to death. 50-odd minutes they strangled Roger Sylvester. I can't breathe, I can't breathe. I'm not just saying he said that because it's popular now. The nurses who saw and heard them squeeze the living daylights out of my little brethren, they told us that that's what he said. So I want to understand. I don't understand. Why would I? And I support the family of Eric Garner. Don't feel no way. But why would I? Why should I go to a shopping centre and lay down for Eric and I can't stand up for Roger Sylvester? All right, so some of you are young. You might not remember what happened in 1999. But what about a brother called Smiley Culture? Oh, you know about Smiley? Police officer don't give me no producer was his tune. You know that? Big tune, made him massive. Also made him a target of the police. So when they come to us and tell us that they raided his house for drugs that they never found, that they let him walk around a kitchen, you know, a black man, walking around the kitchen in the middle of a raid, and that he took a knife and put it through his heart. No reason, you know. Man's living good. There's nothing in the house that can incriminate him. He put a knife through his heart. Who stood up for him? Who stood up for him? And if you didn't, why didn't you? Hear what they said. They put a knife through his heart. And then afterwards, when they was questioned and asked, well, why didn't you handcuff him? They said, well, he's smiling. He was in his house. He was just going to make a cup of tea. But then they did a second autopsy on him and said, well, actually, we find shackle marks on his wrist. And they said, yeah, that's all right. We handcuffed him after he stabbed himself in the heart, just in case he took out the knife and wanted to stab us. So who's standing up for them, brother, there? Is it because we didn't get out the tweets and get out the messages to everybody? Did no one know that this happened? I don't understand. So yeah, I support Eric Garner and the struggle. I actually went to the American Embassy the first time after Trayvon. When I got there, I was shocked. Whoa, where all these people come from? I just had 15 meetings or 10 meetings in Tottenham talking about Mark Duggan. Unarmed black man shot dead. I never seen none of you. And here you are at the American Embassy. So greetings, but let me tell you all this. Justice is like charity. It begins at home. You can't get justice for people in your country. You can't get justice for people in your community. How are you going to get justice for people across that big pond? How is that possible? How is that possible? So yeah, the States is iconic. I accept that. Love Malcolm. Love Malcolm. Came to, I think it was Alabama. That place so big I get confused. Came out there in the 80s once to do, in the 80s, March for Johnny and Marnie Harris, met Sister Angela Davis. Love it, man. Love it. Got banned when I was coming home, you know, because I had the cheek to go on television and say, look how they're treating black people in America, man. I got cussed out by some white people because I said that when I was asked to come here, on Boudreaux Farm, they said, oh, Staff, man, you're going to redneck country, but now I'm here, I can see that this is Martin Luther King country. And the white man told me some things, man. So I stand shoulder by shoulder, but I also stand for my community. The code name for an organization called Tottenham Rights. Tottenham Rights. I love that, because if I say it really fast, you think I say Tottenham Rights. But Tottenham Rights came out as a result of the disturbances, riots that happened in London across England in August 2011. On that, there's a really good documentary that's coming out. The first one that's going to tell the story of Tottenham. A documentary that's not going to mix, and there's no disrespect to anyone because I know it kicked off here, but it's not going to mix what happened in Tottenham with what happened in Salford. It's not going to mix the experience of impoverished young white people frustrated by the system with the experience of young black people growing up in a hood like Tottenham. So for once, we get to tell our story as to why Tottenham burned. I say it's a really good story, but I hope that it never burns and never has to burn again. I grew up in Tottenham, and I grew up at a time when there was another, and I don't want to dismiss this as a slogan, there was another slogan, another term that really inspired me, and that was black is beautiful. Black is beautiful. And for me, that slogan wasn't a plea to those in authority to recognize that black lives had some value, but rather it was spiritually, emotionally, and physically uplifting. It was a reaffirmation of self, culture, and identity. I say for me, I think that's for my community. For me, it was like a battle cry. I was part of that first generation they called it mass immigration into the UK. They might know what mass immigration looks like now. But we were part of that first pool that was actually born here and went into the system and educated by the system. And I'm telling you, by the age of 10, I was ready to fight system because I knew what I saw what system was doing to my mother and father, and I knew what the system had planned for me. So I was ready to stand and be a rebel. So for me, this notion that black is beautiful meant you may look at me and see an ugly beast, someone lesser than an animal, someone you consider to be lesser than human. But when I see myself in others, I see the beauty and the humanity of the world and life reflected in them. So I grew up believing that black was beautiful, I am beautiful, and everyone in my community who looked like me was beautiful, even though the system and the environment that we were born into meant that sometimes we didn't always behave in a beautiful manner. But black was beautiful, especially for us being born in this country. And for us, this is Babylon. This is where it started, you know. This is where they reach out and went all over the world. And here you don't even see policemen with a gun every day because they have everything under control. So I grew up to be a rebel. I had no ambition to be an academic, an intellectual, even an activist. I just wanted to rebel against everything. I was a bit from the Kuntas Kinte school of how you deal with Babylon. You try to run, if you can't run, you try and mash it up, you can't mash it up, burn it down a little bit. I don't really count on sometimes, but don't give in to it. Fight it and resist it at all times. So this notion of black is beautiful, the concept of self-determination and maintaining cultural identity was always at the fore of our campaigns here. Because when we came here, they told us to assimilate. Oh my God, what do you mean 3 minutes? Oh man, they told us to assimilate. Right, I'm going to talk fast now, right? They told us to assimilate, but we weren't into assimilation. And we did lots of things. And some of the things we tried to do, I hear the brothers and sisters saying that that's not what they're going to do in the States no more. But we was about self-help, self-organization, self-development. Groups like Southall Youth Movement grew up in Southall where they advocated and provided service for young Asian youths. On Broadwell Farm, the Broadwell Farm Youth Association, which I'm proud to be one of their founding members, we delivered services to our community, both young and old. A range of activities that empowered and helped our community to look after self. The uprisings of the 80s shook this country to its core, and so it rightly should. And at that point, we were sold that myth that you're all talking about. What was that word? Duopoly? We were told representation was going to make a difference. And we bought into it. We said representation is going to make a difference. I want to be the representative. That's the problem. The community has to decide who their representatives are. So we had a lot of self-appointed representatives. Some of them do good work, especially when they work in government offices. They created all these black groups, caucuses, that actually were frowned upon by those institutions, but were helpful because they held them to account. Their very being challenged their ability to be overtly racist as they'd always been. Unfortunately, some of these bodies, and we had them in the Home Office, we have them, the Black Police Association, they're not my best mates, to be honest with you, but we had them all over. And they helped to hold it to account. And we had some in government, the Gang of Four that went into government. But the problem with some of them is that they failed to caucus and they failed to keep on coming back to community, because I believe it starts in community. I have an issue in my community with some people who come out of the university. But bam, they just suddenly up beside me. Bam, where you come from, bro? University. I'm here to lead. I know everything. I've read the books that dead men have written. I have some issues. We need them, don't get me wrong. We need those brains, we need that insight, we need the ability to be critical and to be able to analyze, but you need to be grounded. You need to know that you have to serve the community before you dare come talk about lead the community. Nowadays, we live in a society. I wanted to go through what all those groups done to show you that we did do things. So when our young people come and they're looking for us to have shops and business, well, we haven't arrived at that point yet. But this is what we've been doing to change this as a society. And anyone who doesn't believe we change this as a society, you need to know what 1960s was like. This was monoculture. This was monoculture. You went out there, you ate fish and chips, right? It was one culture, one way only. And I don't care what no one says. We changed it. We changed it. We've made it possible for others to come, for others to be here. But you know those others who come and they're here, they don't ever look at me and say, you know what, Stafford, you guys changed this and made it easy for us to come here now. So what can we do to support you, to help you to get your family that's in the Caribbean that's not allowed to come here, right? The left will tell me, the left won't even know that my family is trapped in the Caribbean and can't come here. They're going to come and look at me and tell me, say, yeah, you better start, try to remind myself, you better start, come out there and engage for Eastern Europeans. Because now black people can't come here, we're going to tell you Eastern European is BME. So you're all the same and you're all in the same boat, right? They're going to, right? There's the same notion that I heard from the brothers about the Democratic Party in the States. They're going to suck you in and then they're going to give you their politics and want you to prioritize their needs. But I refuse to do that. I prioritize community. I've got so much to say, but I'm not even going to get a chance to say it. So let me just say one thing. Who heard the news yesterday? Did you hear the news yesterday? That we won the right to appeal against that perverse outcome of an inquest into the killing of Mark Duggan. Do my brothers and sisters in the States know what they did to young Mark Duggan? Young Mark Duggan, they forced him to live a dirty life. And when they caught him in a trap, instead of just taking him, they shot him. Unarmed man. This is England, the country that says it brought laws to America and gave laws all over the rules, all over the world. And now they're here to set a precedent that if you're young and you're black and you're unarmed, we can kill you. And we will not answer. We will not be held to account. As a matter of fact, the law and the government will tell us that we did the right thing and we will get promoted. Ain't that worth coming out to stand up and fight against? Shouldn't we be coming out and fighting against this at the same time as we talk about what is going on in America and going on in the States? As I have to wrap it up, as I have to finish, I'm going to stop as I started. Justice is like charity. It begins at home. It begins at home. It's great what you're doing here today. But I hate when universities, and I get several of them come and talk to me and tell me to come and talk about Black Lives Matter, and I haven't had one university ask me to talk about Duggan. I could be a professor when it comes to civil rights movements in the UK. I could be a professor when it comes to what happened on Broadwell Farm. But nobody asked me to come and give a lecture about those brothers and sisters there. So let's not fall into traps that one location, because of its great history, somehow has a right to provide leadership to everywhere and everywhere has to follow. America's already acting as if it is the world. Let us stand up for our community. Remember that anything you do, communities have to be at the fore. Any work you do, it's great that you're bright and smart and can use some 15-syllable words, but come into the hood, rock them down, let people understand. And then we can truly stand together, and then we can truly say that Black Lives Matter, because Black lives will matter to us all. Thank you.